Well, good morning, everyone. Maybe if feel free to write your name and the name of your company, and if not, then from your school or anything, just to see who is in the room today. That would be very nice.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take over from there. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm one of the people behind organizing these roundtables. Um, the project is facilitated or organized by Aarhus University Lifestyle Design Cluster and Design School Calling. And this is day 2 of the Digital Fashion Roundtable. I just spoke with my being muted. All right, I'm gonna start over. Hi everyone. Good morning. My name is Alex. I'm one of the people behind organizing the Digital Fashion Roundtables, and today is day 2 out of 3. So yesterday we kicked off with a really exciting conversation around 3D design and the transition from traditional design to digital design. And today we're going to have an amazing conversation with Emil, Maria, and Trine, who all have different backgrounds. So it's going to be really interesting how it comes together, and we're going to talk about the skill sets and the expertise that is behind digital fashion and everything that you can kind of uncover there. So yeah, I just wanted to say welcome and maybe say a few things before we kick off. So Natalie already mentioned, feel free to write your name and introduce yourself in the chat. Please also use the chat to write any questions that you might have, because we're going to be collecting them and bringing them to the speakers at the end of the roundtable. The talk is about 45 minutes, so until 10. So yeah, just lean back, drink your coffee, or have breakfast, whatever you feel like. Also, a reminder to sign up for the roundtable tomorrow, because it's a separate sign up in case you haven't done that and want to join us again tomorrow on the 3rd day. And I think the last thing I had in mind is that there is, we created a LinkedIn group for these roundtables. So we will be sending out the link to that later. I will also share it in the chat, so we can keep the conversation going and stay connected on this topic even after the roundtables end. But yeah, without further ado, I want to hand the word to Crystal, who's going to be moderating the conversation today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Crystal Arnevik, and I'm the head of fashion at the Design School Calling, where we've implemented the 3D tool called Close 3D 2-3 years ago. And today we invited speakers, and we're going to cover the subject of skills and what kind of skills are required to do to work in 3D, and what kind of various profiles there are within this whole new digital fashion. So I would like to first have a little introduction from the 3 speakers, and I was contemplating, Trine, would you like to have a go at introducing yourself?
Hi there. Yes, I will. My name is Trina, and I'm working at the company United Textile Group. We're a private label brand company, so we make clothes for other brands. We started our digital journey like 2.5 years ago as a tool to be more sustainable. We wanted to make less samples, which you do a lot in this industry, and to eliminate, or not eliminate, but reduce our cost on CO2, and of course of all the transport of these samples being sent around the world. So that's where we started. It's been a really great journey, and we have had amazing experiences of what 3D has done for us as a company. And especially during the whole COVID-19, it's if we hadn't had the 3D tools, we have not been where we are today. So just to start.
Yeah, thank you. Emil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. My name is Emil, and I study Design for Planet at Design School Calling. where I was introduced to cloth 3D and digital fashion, and I've chosen to specialize in that ever since. I work primarily in cloth 3D throughout my design process, but has also started to implement another 3D software into my workflow that's called Blender. And I'm currently doing my master thesis where I'm researching on how we can create tools for how designers can approach fashion design in the digital format, and kind of exploring if we can merge physical and digital fashion experiences.
Thank you. And Maria?
Yes, hello everyone, good morning. So my name is Maria Ingerman and I have an XR company called MAN. We are based in Aarhus. XR stands for extended reality, so that's both VR and AR. I'm definitely going to talk more about that. And we do a lot of different things in our company. We produce these kind of experiences. Our journey into the fashion industry was in 2018 when we did a VR experience called X-Ray Fashion, where it's almost a VR documentary where you can see the process of fast fashion. I'm going to tell you a little more about that later, but that was my journey in there, and we have since then created some different VR and AR projects within the fashion industry, and it's a very exciting topic.
Thank you. So yesterday we also started out by asking how do you explain this whole concept of digital fashion to your families and friends and those who are not in the game. So Maria, perhaps could you just put some words to that? How do you explain it?
Yes, so for me, the easy way to explain this to family and friends is just to say it has everything to do with fashion and the technology. So it's also in the different stages of both in the production and in the distribution. And there's different levels of it. You can talk, it's either has to be incorporated within a real production or it can be purely digital as well. So it's a huge topic and I think it's very exciting. I don't know if I can put more words to that. It is a hard topic to explain.
Yeah, I know it is. And Emil, could you give it a shot as well? How do you explain your family and friends who do not work in digital fashion? How do you explain that, Emil, and that you've been on?
Yeah, I think even explaining to professionals, it could be difficult because digital fashion is very much still new, and we are trying to figure out what it is and what it can become. But basically, when I have to explain it, I see digital fashion as garments that have been created partially or completely through 3D software. So either as to support the physical design and development process of physical fashion, or on the other hand, as a new medium for fashion, where we are trying to change and redefine fashion at its core and really challenging these assumptions that fashion needs to be physical to be real. So yeah, but basically garments that has been created through 3D software.
And Trine, how do you explain it to your family?
It's very difficult to explain short, as everyone says. But I think a bit more practical is, because that's the way we also use it. It's like if you have to create something, you would normally make a sketch or a plan, but here you get one that is 95% realistic, or 99, depending on your ground tools for that, or how good you are at doing it. But here you get a one-to-one image or a 3D object that you can see both front and back without even cutting and sewing anything. And that is, again, if you have to build something, you could do it without using any materials. And that is amazing, especially in the field where we are working, because maybe it takes 5 or 10 versions to get what you want. So
yeah,
short.
Yeah, that was the short one, but you touched upon something that brings me into the next question I wanted to ask you, and that is about skills, because you said 95 to 99% just correct, so you could translate it into to the physical world, what kind of skills do you need to work with 3D programs? What is required? What's the journey to get there? And a sub thing I want to ask before, so I don't have to interrupt you, is like, how does it change the designer's job profile? What are you looking for now? What are the skills and the mindsets?
I think to be able to work in 3D within the fashion, you still need the skills that a normal designer or for that sake a pattern cutter have, but you have to be what do you call it? Where you thought before you have to imagine, and I would imagine one thing looking at my drawing. I have a completely certain thing in my head, but you looking at my sketch could have a different thing. But doing the 3D, we're both looking at the same thing. And here for skills, of course, you need to have the traditional designer skills, but also have a fairly good understanding of pattern cutting to be able to work in the 3D program. The software that we are using, not Claw, but Browseware. Here you have sort of a 2D screen where you see the patterns, and then you have the 3D simulation at the side. So understanding the patterns is a really great help for you to be able to design it, to design better. And again, I think for pattern cutters, they would have to be able to work more. Again, that you sort of are able to simulate the things that you see. So for people that we're looking for, if we were looking for people, I think you have to be really, really open-minded for this, because it's early stage in the 3D journey. So there's a lot of development. There's a lot of things that does not work as you want it to, but there's amazingly a lot of things that really, really works well, and that helps you so much. So you have to be, I would say open-minded, but also a fairly good understanding of pattern cutting. It's not like a must, because at the same time working in 3D, you get to learn the patterns better. Like I'm a designer from background, but my pattern cutting skills has evolved amazingly the last 2 years. And today when I'm talking with our pattern cutters, they're very, again, we're able to share much better, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, yes. But, but do you think that it's a job profile that merges the two, or will it still stay with two professional backgrounds? Or
I think
in your mind,
I think there will be a lot more, I call it a hybrid between a designer and pattern cutters. I think there will be much more of these designers or pattern cutters. I don't know what to call them. But again, you can be very specific if you want to go deep into, for instance, we work a lot with fitting and so on, and that needs very, very skilled pattern cutting things. And whereas if you want to work towards what you call it, design and marketing, then you would probably have a focus on how to add After Effects on the actual 3D simulations that you get. But I believe in this hybrid, that I call it, of a designer and pattern cutters together.
Yeah,
definitely.
I understand. It makes perfect sense. But you just touched upon something now that I'd like to talk to Emil about then, and that's what you said about if you work with the tool as a designer and that whole sort of design process. Emil, could you elaborate a bit on the kind of skills that you have developed in your journey with the using 3D?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, I'm using 3D software throughout my whole process. So from sketching and ideating to producing and realizing, and also to presenting and communicating my designs. And I think it requires different skills on each level. But I definitely agree with Trine that one of the important thing also in the sketching process is to have some level of the basic skills that are expected as designers. So pattern making and material knowledge and so on. But as Trine mentioned, my pattern making skills weren't the best when I started out, but working in Clo 3D has helped a lot and has really improved. But I think it's essential to when sketching and ideating and working more intuitively that you feel comfortable in a 3D software. So for me, knowing Clo 3D and the different aspects and knowing how to work in it is really essential in order to feel comfortable in that process. So I think, yeah, those basic levels are really good, but also getting to learn the lingo of 3D assets and digital assets are really important. But yeah, that thing about that you're working in 2D and 3D at the same time, it's such a new way of working because you immediately see the impact of the alterations that you make. So for me, when I'm more at a sketching level, I might not be doing the pattern making completely correct. So I can perhaps make something where the 3D form and the shape looks good. But if it were to be realized physically, I would have to either go back and change the patterns and redo them so they're correct, or to send them to a pattern maker who can redo it. So I think there's both the potentials for these new hybrid roles, and I think that things will become much more blurry. But personally, I think I would still be very dependent on a pattern maker working as a digital designer if the garments I create are to be created physically. Yeah.
You have I know you've been teaching with me, right? Okay, but do you? I just wondered, because you mentioned you needed to know the whole program. How do you think that you would need all the skills, or can it be done in stages? Or I'm just thinking, if you want to start out in a business and you want to get your workers to, or your designers to work in this program, is it necessary to understand all the tools for both pattern making and rendering and all the levels, or is there an opening that's better to start with than another?
It depends very much on the employers you have and your company and your situation. For me as a design student, I'm very independent in everything, so I need to learn everything myself. But I think as a designer in a company, it's mostly essential that you know how to work with the patterns and have an outset and do the alterations. So getting to know how to work with the 2D and 3D window in Clo 3D is quite essential. And it's a really good starting point just to see how you can alter things. I think that's a really good starting point. And then naturally you can add on to that when you feel comfortable. Then you can start playing around with specific settings for the materials you are working with and so on. But I think for most designers and most companies, the entry level should definitely be about working with your base patterns and learning how to alter that. I think that's a very solid starting point for everyone.
Thank you, Emil. Of course, if you have a comment, the two of you, Trine and Maria, you just have to also let me know, right? But otherwise, right now, I'd like to go to Maria and take and of course, with Maria, we're talking about the storytelling, the showing, the marketing, the probably the thing that people outside the industry will understand the better. Maria, what kind of skills do you see required for that end of it, what you're talking about? Well, a bit about where did how did you get into it? How did you learn it, and what is required there of the skills?
Yeah, I'm very honored to be in this panel. I think it's such an exciting conversation that Emil and Trine just talked about, because that's a part that I don't necessarily know much about, because it's the whole design process of designing in digital fashion. My angle is a little more on the storytelling, as you mentioned, and distribution, because I work with these technologies. VR, it's the one, for those who don't know it, it's where you put on a goggle headset. And augmented reality is where you see a digital object that looks like it's integrated in our reality, and you usually see this through a screen. And these two new mediums, VR and AR, you can use them for multiple things. Some people are experimenting with designing in virtual reality, but that still has a way to go technically wise. But there is so many options for telling stories with these mediums or showing products. For us, I think it's obviously, if you want to work with this as a company, it's of course to have a creative mind, and that's lucky for the fashion industry. It's very creative in general. You also have to be willing to take some chances and also have a lot of patience, I think, with these new technologies, some less VR and AR, because of course there is some different limitations. And I think it's important to understand what the strengths and weaknesses are for both mediums. For us, I think VR is a very good medium for showing environments and getting feeling, transporting your audiences, even if it's a normal customer or is it a B2B, you can show them, let them step into your world. And that's where VR is very powerful, because it's completely close you in this digital world. You can see all around. And this you can use to show your, for example, the production process, for example, or you can use it to make a digital showroom to show your products in a nice environment. And augmented reality is more better for showing products like it's in your real life, as I tried to explain before. So we have been doing some examples of these is that we did the VR experience X-ray fashion, which is a VR installation. So it's actually, you take on a VR goggles and you also take a computer backpack, and then you actually physically have to walk around on a 4x5 meters installation, where you also feel the surfaces changes. So you step into water and you step on soft cotton. And while you do these things, you see complemental visuals. So you really get the feeling of being present within these environments. And this was to show the darker side of the fast fashion industry. So with this experience, for example, you were sitting inside a sweatshop in India, where you were then looking around and you saw a seamstress sitting right in front of you. And at the same time, we were having some heat lamps at the side, so you could really feel the heat in that scene. And that was and you see different stages of garment production in this experience. So that's an example of how you can use virtual reality to show a production. This was, of course, a little more on the dark side of it, but it can also be shown positively. If you have a brand that you're very proud of having a sustainable supply chain, you can, of course, make VR experiences showing this and sending it out to your customers as well, to be transparent and offer this extra experience. And with augmented reality, we have also an example. We've been doing a collaboration with VR Design from Herning, where we have been challenging, where they came and asked us, how can we use these for distributing our talents graduation projects? And here we saw that especially augmented reality was really good for this kind of tasks, because we could use a technique called photogrammetry, where you basically take real life objects and then you scan them into a digital object. And that's very useful when you have a real life product. Obviously, if you're designing it in 3D, you have a 3D model of it. But if you have a real collection that you want to showcase, you can scan it into a digital object, and then you can show it in augmented reality. And that's what we did with this experience here. And it was very practical also now with the pandemic, of course, because every fair was canceled. So this year they could just send out an app and everybody could actually download it and see the models pop up in real life. And then they could see the different collections. And just to do a little promotion, if anyone wants to try this, it is called Sustain AR, and it can be downloaded on the iOS store, and it works best for iPhone 8 and up.
Yeah.
That was an experiment that was very exciting to try with showing it.
Thank you. And perhaps you should write that little heads up down in the chat, so everybody's thinking, what did you say? You know, but yeah, because there is so much, you know, with the terminology and what is this and that. But this, of course, what you're talking about is really showing where also digital fashion can be taken or shown, or physical being shown in a digital world, or turned digital instead as well. But also, I think more than anything, listening to you, it goes to show that skills wise things are quite divided, and that I think is also, at least now we were talking about in the beginning, where how do you translate digital fashion to your friends and family who are not working within this. And I think that most people find that, oh, it looks nice and easy, it's easy to be done, but this really shows that you are experts in each your levels. And as Trine talked about, a hybrid it might be asking too much if we have a hybrid going all the way from production and all the way to what you're doing, Maria. So as for the hybrid, again, if we go back to you, Trine, and perhaps Maria and Emil also can chip in on this one here, is like, so the skills and the mindset you're talking about as a hybrid, but how do we get into change so people can actually work digitally? How do you train and make sure that your employees can work in this field?
It takes a lot of teaching. I also say, as I said before, you really have to be open-minded. Again, to all, I would say, all 3D, VR, and so on, to get the most amazing experience, you have to be open for it and accept that it's not reality, but still use your common sense. But we spend a lot of hours teaching, and again, you only become an expert when you keep working with it and not jumping back to hand sketching or Illustrator, 2D flat drawings and all this. We had the opportunity to hire 2 new designers who were both very, very open-minded for 3D, and they developed extremely well because they had the focus on the 3D. That was what they were meant to do. So actually they have hardly created, I think they only created 1 or 2 samples in 6 months, whereas normally one person would create, I don't know, but up to 10 or 20 a week. So this is really amazing. But again, they are working with everything from within the design to try and make small animation videos that we can show to our customers on what we do as a work. So again, a bit, Emil also said it, that there's a lot of language, there's a lot of details you need to know about. What is a FBX, what is a OBJ file, how does it work? You need to use Premiere Pro to cut a video and so forth. There's small skills, but I also believe that the new designers coming out, they are almost digital native, so they come with a lot of skills as well that us from a little bit older generation, we are not so into. But definitely open-mindedness towards the 3D is an absolute must to be able to succeed. And also a bit what Emil said before, for a company, again, you need to also know what it is you want. what is it you want to use it for, because it's a fantastic tool, but it can also be it has its limitations. So in that way, that is what I would recommend.
Mhm. And Emil, do you have any comments, any thoughts on this with the time, and how have you spent a lot of time yourself?
Yeah, I think I've been working a lot digitally, and I think one thing is creating garments digitally, but I think also when you're working with digital fashion as a designer, I think one of the really interesting things is a part of your design, for me at least, is also creating universes and environments and storytelling elements surrounding your design. And therefore, for me, it's essential to have collaborators like Maria who can help me figure out how can this go beyond the screen, because what's amazing about the digital is that it goes beyond the screen. We just need a nice format to show that it is more than just something on your screen. And I think this collaborative mindset is so important. And for me, going from the fashion industry and getting into the more 3D world, I think what amazed me a lot is how open-minded people are and how collaborative people are. That instead of trying to figure out something yourself, people are really keen on actually helping each other realize ideas. When you're facing problems, you go online, you go to community forum, you go to YouTube. People are really just sharing their knowledge. And I think a big part of digital fashion is to embrace this mindset, embrace this idea of open sourced and creating this community feeling, because I think if we put all the responsibility of realizing everything down to one person, it will be overwhelming. So I think it's an amazing opportunity for the fashion industry to embrace a new way of collaborating to create really nice experiences for customers and creating new ways of designing and new ways of presenting fashion and engaging with fashion. So I think this collaborative open-mindedness is really a core skill and mindset we need to have when working with digital fashion.
That's really nice. I was thinking, thank you, Emil. I was just thinking, I can see that now there's like 13 minutes left, and I was wondering are there any questions from anyone to these three people who are sharing all their knowledge? Or
there has been a question in the chat regarding a workflow example from idea to presentation. So I guess a project from the beginning to the end and what that looked like. I don't know if any of the speakers wants to give an example of a project they've done. And I guess workflow implies what tools were used and what skills were required.
That's a very good question. Yeah.
Yeah, I can share from my current project as a part of my master's thesis. So normally when starting to design garments and so on, I of course start with an inspiration source. So in this project, my idea is to capture a very specific experience I had with a participant. So trying to capture this experience and those feelings that were documented during our experiment, I translated this into a kind of a mood board. From there, I started using Blender, which is another 3D software, where I created environments to capture these things, some motions, some digital artifacts that kind of captures what was present in this experience we were having. From there, I went back to Clo and started working with the form and shape and materials of the garments, and taking my project files and my garments from Clo and getting it back into Blender, because in Blender you have the possibility to create these huge environments where it goes beyond just the actual garment. So you put the garment into the context of the environment that you have created. And I'm also using Blender a lot to do renders and animations, because it's more complex than what you are able to realize in Clo. But that complexity also gives you an opportunity to do a lot of different things, and you have almost unlimited possibilities of having your garment designs interact in the environment that you have created.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Another question that came in, and maybe I'm going to direct this one to Maria because it is related to VR and AR worlds. The question is, when do you think we will be ready to have a digital wardrobe to migrate easily between platforms? So, for example, wearing a digital outfit with an avatar to hop into metaverses or virtual games like Sansar, and then hop into a WebGL or another platform like VR Chat or Altspace. I don't know if this is something you've been thinking about, Maria, and can speak on, but
Yeah, sure. So it's definitely an exciting topic because that's everyone's dream, that it's going to be more incorporated. Everything's going to be fluent between the different platforms. I think there will still be some time before we have that completely fluid, we call it, transform between platforms. But however, I think it's not going to be that long before we see that people can actually try different digital garments, both within AR, for example. I know there's still some way, but I've seen a lot of creators all over the world trying to do little tests on trying to have, because now the technology is, for example, a camera on an iPhone or newer phones in general can track bodies. And this is an interesting aspect, because as soon as you can track a body, you can somehow place a digital garment on it as well. And it still looks a little itchy, but it's getting there, and it's something that people are looking into. Regarding digital showrooms, it's also a topic that's very, very relevant. We've been very lucky to also work with one of Collins Design's students, brilliant talents, Simone, who's a speaker tomorrow as well. She's been doing a project where she came to us and asked if we could help her look into making a digital showroom. So she has been designing in Clo, her designs, and then we have showcased it in VR. So as mentioned, these different things are happening small, and it's definitely also a big part of her assignment, I think, is to see if we can do these virtual showrooms. And she also really wanted to try to distribute it both in VR and AR, and she's been doing some testing with that. And so it is a goal, but it still has a long way until it really comes to where you can just jump between it. Something I think it's going to really give it a push is when Apple comes out with their new AR glasses, and we don't quite know when they will do that. But obviously Apple has a huge claw in the whole way of how we can communicate in our everyday life. And I think everybody's talking about these rumors that Apple is hiding away somewhere with a lot of great programmers. They're trying to do the ultimate augmented reality glasses. So it means that maybe it's going to replace the phone. And as you all know right now, the phone is where we usually scroll between different platforms and show doing everything. So if the next thing is going to be augmented reality, that will be a time where we're probably going to see this push towards having more fluent platforms in the digital space in general. And I think there will be a couple of years before they really push out a new device, and then there will also be some time for it to develop properly. But so I would say five years still until that happening.
I like that you settled on a number.
That was the question.
Amazing. Yeah, I think those are the most intriguing things to think about, is where this will head in terms of how we interact in online spaces. The next question is for Trine, and it's regarding open source and collaboration. So the question is what is your impression from the industry perspective of the uptake of collaborative work culture and open source sharing? How would this impact the fashion industry? So I guess it's referring to how digital fashion is part of file sharing and collaborating, and how also these new tools maybe push forward new collaborations.
Yes, I think, of course, it will create a new, what do you call it, a way of, or that's what we believe, it will create a new way of working together with different companies, whereas especially for the fast fashion industry, or at least where I am working, the commercial way, we have where you sort of shop around between suppliers and buy where you get it the cheapest way, or exactly what you want, or choose between different ones. Here you are more into a more a long-term relationship with your suppliers, to be able to have this what you call it, trust between, at least that's what we're experiencing, that we're sharing 3D to obtain the whole speed process of what 3D can do. Is the speed to market. Instead of having 2 days to do a sample, you would or you would spend a lot of time making samples. Now you can do it within hours. And this sort of relationship you get to the customer, you have to have this trust that quality and finishing of the garments is intact, and that is what you buy into, if that makes sense. So both for us we are a supplier, we would have to be more open-minded towards our customers in file sharing and so on, and the same the customer back to us. We have one customer now that also works in 3D, and we work in the same program, so we're actually able to share files, which is really amazing, because there's not a lot of us in the industry working with it here in Denmark. So here it's really amazing to try and see it from that angle. Otherwise, it would be us showing 3D either images or objects to customers. And here, of course, we can share the files that they can proceed using if they want to. But again, very few are, at least of the customers that we have, we're using it for like fitting and to show final designs and so on, but they are not taking on the actual 3D object and bringing it forward towards their customer. So I think, again, it's a long way, because many more has to get into the 3D to be able to have this sharing.
Yeah.
But of course, it is an issue, because we have all our patterns. In the minute we share a file, we will hand over our patterns to our customer, and if they have a special pattern that they have designed and whatever, they are handing it over to us, and they have to trust that we would not misuse it, or whatever you call it. So it really needs, you need to trust each other, which sometimes has been a what you call it, in our industry, it's been difficult to have this trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that digital fashion is interesting because it is pushing these boundaries of how the traditional fashion industry has been operating so far. And it kind of relates to the last question. I don't think we're going to have time to get into it much further, but it's a great question because it really relates to the talk tomorrow. So Natalie is asking, what are your thoughts on the Fabricant, who's going to be speaking tomorrow at our third talk? The Fabricant is a digital-only fashion studio, so they create clothing that only exists virtually, and their entire theme is about never going into physical production. And DressX, which is a web shop that is selling digital-only clothes, so also nothing is being physically produced, and where they are taking fashion. So tomorrow we will be talking about these visionary ideas for how is it transforming the fashion industry. And I'm going to give the last word to Crystal, maybe to wrap it up for today. And I'm going to say thank you from my side.
Yes, thank you all. And yes, thank you very much to Natalie. Perfect question for leading on. It's a cliffhanger for tomorrow. You can have to sign up for tomorrow again. But yes, thank you very much to the speakers. I'm so happy you would spend some time with us and share your knowledge and experiences and insights. We could go on to many more levels, and I hope you all had a good got a good idea of what this is about and how the journey could be, and that it's definitely fruitful for both for production and for also if you want to stay digital. So thank you all very much. I hope to see many tomorrow again. Yes, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Take care.